Hi everyone, just going to talk you through some ideas of how we have been looking at progression within the mathematical proficiencies and assessment within the new curriculum for Wales framework at Newbridge School in South Wales. So to start off with then, when we're considering the mathematical proficiencies and how we're going to develop them, as a head of department for me, it was important that I considered the elements that you can see on the screen. First of all, the pedagogy. So how are we going to teach certain elements, ensuring that we are developing the why and not the process-driven how to do. We want the learners to be able to understand why they're doing the concepts or the skills that they are doing and not just be able to follow a process. Within that, we need to ensure that our scheme of learning is ordered in the correct manner to make sure there are correct links between the topics. So no longer teaching discretely as number, shape, and space data that may have happened previously, but considering how certain topics link into each other and teaching those together. And then for assessment is how and what do we want to assess and how are we going to ensure that these questions develop the mathematical proficiencies. And that's backed up by effective resources. So what resources are we going to use to supplement the pedagogy to ensure that there is development at all possible times for every learner? And all that comes together for me. And the most important bit of the curriculum for Wales is ensuring that learners develop lifelong mathematical skills so that they can go on and be an active part of society and successfully use the skills that they've learned in whatever scenario they may need them in the future. So what changes have we made? As I mentioned, we changed from the traditional order of the schema learning to grouping of topics that naturally fit in real life. We are in the process of creating a schema learning that allows for the development of the four purposes, as well as the application and development of the principles of progressions or mathematical proficiencies. We've got the introduction of activities that allow learners to apply their knowledge to real life scenario or problems. So really developing the application of the skills. And finally, we are considering topics and themes from other AOLEs to provide learners with opportunities to see how mathematics or numeracy works in real life. So the kind of process we've ended up with is starting off with lessons that focus on procedural methods, but using pedagogy that promotes the why. And within that, we're really looking to develop the conceptual understanding, learners' communication using the correct symbols, fluency, and strategic competence. With that, then, we are developing tasks and applying those to tasks that require application and problem solving, which will allow for the development of fluency, logical reasoning, and again, that strategic competence. And we are hoping that through a combination of these strategies, we will have learners that develop mastery in the topics covered. And they're competent and confident with the skills and the mathematical proficiencies that they have covered and developed within a given topic. So our schemes of learning are written in stages, and the idea of these stages is they are written in line initially with the progression steps. So stage one will cover progression step two, moving into three, and then that would develop so on with stage three ultimately covers progression step four. So movement from stage to stage within that scheme of learning, so for each topic is written like this, requires a development of the mathematical proficiency. So we're not just saying learners have to stay at stage one. Within a class, if a teacher feels that stage one is being completed really well, then learners can move on and develop the proficiencies and their skills up into stage two. But it's giving you the next step. So we're constantly looking to push, challenge, and develop learner skills. The resources you can see they are used where appropriate to develop principles of progression. So, and again, the mathematical proficiency. So, for example, this is with fractions. So, ensuring we use a bar modeling to develop the understanding of that why, develop within each learner, yes, the conceptual understanding of where a fraction is, but then being able to apply that and logically reason, for example, with fractions, deciding which one is smallest or biggest, or different fractions of amounts, and comparing both of those. And then we've got assessment at relevant points to ascertain progress. So we have our Amster-Wethler assessment, which we're going to come to a little bit later, which are low stakes testing. And then we have more formal summative assessments. Then the other key strand I mentioned was pedagogy within the department. So Within our departmental meetings, we agreed on key pedagogical techniques, ideas, strategies in order to promote learner understanding. An example of this is the grid method for multiplication and its application to further topics. So whenever we are talking about multiplication, we use the grid method. That might be expanding single brackets at GCSE level, it could be polynomial long division at A level, but that idea of grid method and how we can use and apply that, so developing those proficiencies within the grid method has been a real key focus for us, and this is now becoming a cluster-wide conversation. So engaging with feeder primary schools, and the aim of this is to enhance progression and transition between the two stages. We talked about bar modeling for fractions, again, as another key strategy we're going to use to develop those mathematical proficiencies for each and every learner, and the application of skills. So ensuring that we are exposing our learners to be able to develop their skills initially, yes, but also apply to logically reason to develop their fluency and to problem solve. So another example of us developing the proficiencies is shown here, where we've got a learner that is dividing using the powers of 10. Now, what we actually decided is we're going to use different notation with more able learners when using a power of 10 and actually get them comfortable using the powers, so 10 cubed, 10 to the power of 4, and so on. And we wanted to develop the ability to comfortably switch between these two and using equivalent notation for each concept. Again, that is developing their communication with symbols, their fluency, and their logical reasoning. What we're also hoping is this experience will help learners when they're exposed to standard form for the first time a little bit later on in their journey. So will they have the strategic competence within them to recognize and make the link between this skill and then use those underlying structures within a standard form problem? We talked about bar modeling with fractions. So here on the left hand side, you can see where we've got a learner comparing fractions. The idea that they're drawing the fractions out first, using the bar model, they're getting a conceptual understanding for what is going on, and then applying their conceptual understanding to the reason which fraction is the biggest. And again, on the right hand side, rather than just learning the old saying, divide by the bottom times by the top, why are we doing that? Using the bar model to really promote that mathematical understanding. Further applications of the bar model. So again, converting 9/4 into a mixed number. So considering what does 9/4 actually mean? How many quarters make up a whole? So if we're going to then convert that into a mixed number and using that bar model to really develop firstly conceptual understanding and then developing fluency. And on the right hand side, you can see those things coming together. So where a learner has been able to correctly put the correct inequality symbol between two fractions, they've got the bar model explaining why, and then being able to write down their thoughts and give a logical, reasoned answer to their answer of 3/5 being smaller than 3/4. And then an example of an application is when learners have looked at mean, median, mode, so averages and statistics, and considering where appropriate linking these topics to authentic opportunities. So within this example, learners are expected to use average to interpret information before coming to a conclusion. And here, this task is all about the gender pay gap. So we're actually looking to develop learners' understanding of diversity as a cross-cutting theme. So the gender pay gap actually exists in real life. This data is from 2023, and developing not only the skills mathematically, developing the proficiencies, but learners are seeing where and how these can be used in everyday life. Then looking at the resources that we're using. So I think MathSpot is really, really great. So you've got the manipulators on there. One example is the Dean's blocks that we use, particularly with middle to lower ability learners, to develop their understanding of place value and ensuring that they're fully competent with that. We subscribe to MathsPad. MathsPad is particularly good for visuals. So when we talk about volume, it's not just, for example, a cuboid is multiplying, is why is it becoming, or how do we multiply all three? And is the idea that we're building in centimeter cubes. So we go through this with learners and we get them developing the idea that we're filling the space up with centimeters cubes, and then they logically reason to the fact that the cuboid would be base times length times height. So they can see that building up. So the conceptual understanding is being used through pictures, and then they get to the final conclusion of base times height times length for a cuboid. Another example of an application we've got is a weekend in London. So learners have to plan a trip to London after they've done a module of work. So they go through, and I'm going to skip through this very quickly, looking at different activities. So this is displayed to them. They can watch the different videos, so they can ascertain what's going on. Then they're given different travel options, different overnight accommodation options, and different activities to do. Then this is for the middle ability learners. They are given a task. So they've got to take a youth club for 2 adults and so many children, and they're going to stay for 2 nights and will complete 3 activities. And they have to use the information sheet now to complete that task. So they've got the conceptual understanding of, say, times it by 10, 100, 1,000. But they're now taking this, they are reasoning as to which one they're going to pick, and then they've got the strategic competence to understand we spent too much money, or this is what the answer is going to be, we've got this money left, so we could do this activity instead. So again, looking to develop these skills into an application in real life.